Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Sitecore Summit series. I am your host, Jaina Baumgartner, and today to discuss Composable DXP, I have a very special guest, Dylan Young. I have been following Dylan for ages. He is absolutely a Sitecore superstar, watching his videos, following them, tweaking Sitecore the way he suggests to. And recently, I have had the amazing pleasure of actually working with someone I find so inspiring. So, Dylan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I could probably go on about you forever, but I'll hand it over to you for a moment to talk about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Dylan Young, as Jaina mentioned. I've been doing Sitecore for about 7 years now. I got started at a smaller agency doing Sitecore for the first time. I came from kind of a DNN background, doing a .NET Nuke. And
Me too.
Yeah, well, it seems like that's a kind of a common leap off point
from DNN to Sitecore. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, I started there, and I always thought Sitecore was a little interesting because it was like a desktop view and felt like I was using Windows for doing development, and so it was a weird interface, and I really started getting into it. Once I started using it, I kind of fell in love, especially as I started getting better at it. Because I really sucked with it when I first started. No lie there. Where the YouTube channel came out of all of that was I didn't see any good resources to help me learn. So I thought, hey, I'm starting to learn how to do it right. Maybe I should share.
So you helped everyone else like me who might suck at it get better.
Exactly. Well, I mean, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, that's where it came from. Also, user groups were hard to do around my location. They were very salesy, so I saw it as it was a great way I could just share. I didn't know what it would become. It's become, crazy what it is today. I'm about to hit 300,000 views, which is
wow,
crazy in my mind.
Congratulations.
And, yeah, and 2,500 subscribers. So, it's morphed into something even beyond what I could have imagined. So,
well, for anyone, on today listening to this, if you aren't a viewer or subscriber of Dylan's YouTube channel, you should absolutely check it out. There are a lot of interesting videos to get you started, and then you do video series, right, Dylan, to kind of help on any particular topic within Sitecore?
exactly. Most of my topics earlier on were more developer beginning topics, and then I kind of went into marketing a little bit. This year, there was a hiatus I had for a little while there. This year, I got back into it. Spent a lot of time on containers and Docker, so there's a lot of videos on that topic. And then now I found all this great stuff related to composable DXPs and all the SaaS offerings that Sitecore just bought. So I'm playing around with Mooseend right now, but I'm sure Order Cloud's right up on the next thing I'm going to do a bunch of videos on. So,
well, speaking of Mooseend and Order Cloud, our topic for today's Composable DXP, and yesterday we were talking about this. I didn't look it up and I can't remember. Sitecore, got this huge investment, I think about a year ago. I'm not sure exactly. It feels like a long time ago, but I think so much has happened since then. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about why we're here in terms of Sitecore's investment and these products that Sitecore's purchased?
I mean, it's a shift for Sitecore. I mean, they've been talking about SaaS. I remember it at least 2 symposiums ago, that are trying to shift to SaaS. It's kind of a change of their model of how they're building sites or helping clients build sites. It goes into the topic of composable DXP versus traditional. So traditional Sitecore was a kind of a monolithic architectured product. So you'd buy, 100% of a product, and then you'd only use 20% of it, which you'll see in my presentation. But it's this shift to SaaS and being more modern, Mac architectures for a lot of these new products that they've purchased, sticking with more modern technologies.
Awesome. It's interesting you call it Mac architecture, because I call it mock. I'm not sure whether it's mock.
I don't know what acronyms. I mean,
maybe we need someone to educate us the way it's pronounced.
Sounds better mock, I will say, but it sounds like it should be Mac. But
all right, well, let's get started. And why don't you talk about what is Composable DXP?
Sure. Should I share my slides?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. Let me do that real quick, if I can remember how. All right. So what is a DXP? You probably have seen a lot of content kind of coming out in the last, especially it seems like the last few months, on DXP this, DXP that. What is a DXP? Simply put, I have a definition there. I think it's from Gartner. But really what it is a grouping of products that helps customers deliver digital experiences. So typically that can contain a lot of different things. It can contain a CMS, it can contain a commerce, analytics, personalization, marketing, automation. There's a lot of things it can contain essentially. But it doesn't have to necessarily be all of those things. So if you're a utility provider, you're not necessarily doing commerce stuff today. You're probably got a CMS in there. You're doing some analytics and personalization, but not doing that full picture of what a DXP is. So that brings me to the two different types of DXPs. And this is the traditional one. Sitecore XP is the traditional platform DXP. So basically it means, in the more traditional sense, it's a product that tries to solve all the problems as one. And so Sitecore XP was like that. It had analytics in there. It was a CMS. It did authentication type services. It did a lot of different things that would try to solve most of the challenges for customers. It also included, as an optional, commerce. It also included EXM. So it would try to do a lot of different things all as one. And it's typically based on one technology stack. So, Sitecore XP, mostly .NET, Microsoft stack, more modern terms of traditional platform. There's been some, inclusion of this headless technology with, JavaScript frameworks and things like that. But for the most part, it's a monolithic product that does a lot of different things, all with one kind of technology focus. Some drawbacks, it's tightly coupled. So meaning everything is all as one. I've seen clients that have, they're using this product, and they're everything is talking to Sitecore, talking to the CMS, talking to all these different pieces, and everything is to peel that back it would be very challenging. The EXM is talking, a lot with the CMS and things like that, and it's just this one system that's doing all the things. And that presents also a learning curve for some clients. They don't get to necessarily choose the commerce product they want to use. They don't get to choose the analytics tools that they want to use. In a lot of cases, they have to kind of stick with what is in this one key product. So there's, in a lot of traditional platform setups, it's you're usually buying one little piece of it, or you're buying one large piece of it. Sorry, and you're only really using a small segment of it. In most cases, I would say there's some clients that are using. I've seen a few along my ways in the Sitecore world where they're using all the product or a good like 90% of it. But most customers I've seen are using 10, 20, 30% of the product and not the rest of it. And they're paying for that, the rest of the product.
Right. It is a maturity, right? To use all the 80 to 90% of Sitecore, because there is a lot there, a lot of benefit from everything that Sitecore provides, but it does take organizational maturity to.
And I think
use
it's important to distinguish that. I don't think this is necessarily going away. Some customers will benefit just from having the one traditional DXP product, using all the features. Some customers are already on Sitecore that are using. I know somebody is using XC, EXM, CMS, the whole shebang, basically. And for them to transition to what is now the Composable DXP, which is what I'm getting to, it's going to be hard for them to do that.
And it might not make sense if you are using, if you are there and you are mature enough to use all of that product, then it might not make sense for you.
Exactly. And from what I know, Sitecore does not plan on dropping their traditional Sitecore XP product. So then that brings us to the Composable DXP. So I think this always kind of existed. Now it's got a name of Composable DXP. You would try to achieve this somewhat, or what this represents, with XP, but you would end up buying this product. You'd only use a portion of it, and then you would bring in all these other pieces, as well as the core platform. So this just allows you to, with a Composable DXP, it allows you to just buy the things that make the most sense for your company. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to buy, Sitecore CMS. You could use something else, and I'll get to that in a second. But you can use the things that make the most sense. It's kind of this best of breed, methodology there. So starting out, you start with the middle content mesh. You pick your technology that you want to, build your sites with. You could be Angular, it could be React, it could be Svelte, which is not even listed in that diagram. You can use anything that you want, and then you can use anything you want to deploy out to anything you want. So you could deploy out.
Call it the anything you want DXP.
Yeah, exactly. And it could be something that your that the customer is more familiar with. So if they're more familiar with AWS and I forgot what the AWS, I think it's called Code Deploy, is the deployer for AWS. They could do that in this model. Now, where the Composable DXP stuff comes in is all the other integrations. So you need a CMS or typically to manage your content. So you have a choice of who you want to use from a CMS standpoint. You have a choice from, if you want to do commerce, you can use a Headless Commerce like Order Cloud. And then on the CDP forms, etc., you can use the new SaaS offerings from Sitecore, or you could use something else, Marketo or Salesforce or whatever makes sense for your organization, what you're more comfortable with in your model. So
very cool. Yep. That's awesome.
Yeah, so there's a lot of benefits to this approach. There is one slight negative, but it can be a positive as well. So faster time to value. You can focus on buying the things that you plan on using first, and not necessarily buying the things that you're not planning on using first. So for example, if you just have content management that you want to do on your site, you could just start with CMS and bring in and fold in the analytics stuff later on. You have the ability to swap out, which adds a lot more flexibility to what you, for example, you could start with Salesforce, or you could start with something else, maybe a forms engine that you want to use that's, a MarTech stack forms, and you could swap it out later to a Sitecore product. Obviously, if you're like on Headless Order Cloud, and later on in the future, a 461 comes out, you could shift to that. So you can kind of stick with the most modern, products that are coming out. You can kind of shift to, and it's great also from the Sitecore perspective, because as they come out with new technologies or new techniques, you could shift on over to those as well. So you can kind of mix and match, which is bringing me on to the next point, which is mixing and matching. Like I said, you don't have to necessarily use Sitecore CMS. You could use something like Contentful or another headless CMS tool, and then pair it with something like Content Hub, or pair it with Boxever for CDP management, et cetera. Or, do Sitecore CMS and use something like Segment for CDP instead. You have a lot more flexibility to mix and match your service offering that you want to provide, and provide something maybe you're more familiar with as a organization. Lower cost is, I see this all the time, the phase 1, phase 2 approach. You build your site with phase 1. You usually save all your phase 2 for personalization. Instead of going and buying and using, Boxever, for example, you could save buying that on your phase 1 implementation. And then when you go on to phase 2, you can buy Boxever and then bring it into the fold. So it saves you some costs, because you're not necessarily needing to buy the full suite right out the gates. The only slight negative to this is lots of integrations. That's a positive and a negative. If you choose the right tools that you're more comfortable with the integrations of, or maybe they already have connectors, then the integrations aren't so bad. So.
And I think this is where Mock comes into play as well, right? That makes integrations easier.
Yeah. If the product is using, of the Mock part, the API first, if they're API focused, the integrations are usually more predictable. They're based on a RESTful approach. Usually you can kind of predict the verbs that they're using. And if you're familiar with that RESTful approach, then how you would implement it should be pretty predictable.
Yeah, and generally, Mock platforms, I think it might actually even be a principle of them with the API first concept, that anything that's available through the UI is also available through the API.
Exactly. Whatever it's kind of that shift of approach, that you build the APIs first and then you build the interfaces off of it.
Right.
The microservices part of that also allows you, I know with Order Cloud, you can pick parts of the product that you want to use. I know with Order Cloud, you have a lot of different services. So if you wanted to track orders, but you didn't want to, have inventory, for example, Order Cloud allows you to just use the pieces that you want from the platform. So that's pretty cool as well.
Cool. Great.
So that's pretty much it from my presentation. So
awesome. Well, thank you, Dylan. I have a few more questions then for you.
Sure.
So, you mentioned we've talked about a variety of products here, but there are a few. This is Sitecore Summit Series, right? So there are a few that Sitecore has introduced in the last few months. So could you talk a little bit more about Sitecore's Composable DXP stack and what all that includes?
Yeah, there's actually 4 products. One goes way back to Style Labs' acquisition of Content Hub. Content Hub is basically a CMP product, a DAM product, and a few other things like MRM as well. And I think there's a PIM as well. So it contains basically a little bit different picture of some of the things you want to manage. So it's not necessarily CMS focused. CMP is basically the process of managing content before it kind of enters that CMS realm. From a Order Cloud perspective, that's a headless CMS or a headless commerce piece. Its flexibility is that it's a different. The best way to see this is what they compare to from a traditional DXP process. So This headless CMS for Order Cloud is most comparable to XC inside the traditional DXP. So how does it compare? It's a little bit different. It's definitely a modern stack. It comes with the mock that we've been discussing. It's very flexible for customers to implement. Like I said, because it's based on this Mac architecture, there's a lot of flexibility about how you build it to work with your instance. Moose End, I'm actually presenting on that topic tonight for the Portland Sitecore user group. That one is a similarity to EXM. It's an email marketing tool. It's super powerful because it's a product that was purchased by Sitecore that actually compares pretty well with MailChimp. And I'll be talking about a little bit more about that tonight. So that's a great tool that Sitecore has brought in. If you're familiar with EXM, it's complicated sometimes to get started with EXM. So Moose End is actually a great tool because it's super simple to get started with it and start playing with it. Same with Order Cloud actually as well. And then BoxEver is a kind of another composable DXP model for the traditional XDB or a setup in a traditional DXP. That's a lot of acronyms, but basically it's a CDP product. So the ability to identify contacts and track those contacts through your sites, potentially your website, but also across other omni-channel experiences as well. So that's a small snapshot of the products. I think you're muted.
And then have personalization and decisioning on top of that as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. Very cool. Well, thank you, Dylan. And for those of you who want to hear more about Composable DXP, please get in touch with us. We can, help you identify which Sitecore is right for you. And conduct a workshop to help you get there in terms of your marketing experience, architecture, and figure out where the missing blocks are of your Composable DXP and help you identify the right fit within those blocks. And as for our next Sitecore Summit series, we're going to start getting into each of these products that Dylan just mentioned. So our next Sitecore Summit series is with Mark Johnson, the founder of 451 and Order Cloud. And we're so excited to have him here. We will be talking about owning your commerce roadmap, and that will be on September 23rd. So thanks everyone for joining Dylan and me today, and looking forward to seeing you guys in September. Bye.
Bye, everyone.